Are you proud to be an American? Do you love your country? Well, if so, then you are a patriotic person. Patriotism can be defined as having love and support for your country. Not only is it about feeling pride in your country, but it is taking that pride and taking action to improve your country's overall well-being. Some of the most well-known ways to show patriotism in America are flying the American flag and stating the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is a symbol for our freedom, and flying a flag sends a message to others that you are proud of that freedom. During the pledge, it is expected that you stand and respect the flag with your hand over your heart. As a citizen in our democratic nation, one way to make your statement is to take advantage of your right to vote. Voting or even getting involved in a campaign can be categorized as taking action for the welfare of your country. As Abraham Lincoln stated, that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from earth. So with our gained freedom, we as citizens should constantly be working together to help our nation. Government is a main component of patriotism, and by learning and understanding our government, we are able to make conscious and appropriate decisions for the good of our nation. Overall, patriotism is very important to this country and can be dated back to our forefathers and their fight for freedom and a better nation.
Personally, I feel that we need to teach patriotism in the classroom. It is important that students need to know about our nation, government, voting, and how to be a contributing citizen in society. However, it is important that we do not tell students what they should believe, but rather give them the resources they need to decide and make their own understanding of the content.
Instilling a sense of patriotism in our students fulfills an innate human need and civic virtue to belong. When we feel as though we are a part of something bigger than ourselves, we are more able to find commonalities between ourselves and others. As children living in America, students are able to find solidarity between their peers when they express patriotism. Wilfred McClay, in his article How to Think About Patriotism, says it is only intending both facets of patriotism, our love of America and love of ideals, that we can nurture our civic value and elevate our sense of belonging to live in accordance with the best things in us. In The Anatomy of Patriotism by Sardo, the role of patriotism is said to be primarily in providing a strong common identification. Patriotism is based on an identification with others in a particular common enterprise, so that could be like a classroom or a school community. As such is somewhere between friendship or family feeling on one side and altruistic dedication on the other. This aligns with our country's democratic ideals, which teach values like the ones that we've reflected upon this semester in Teach 258. We are more likely to have a healthy community when we feel identification between ourselves and others. This can be practiced in the classroom and will transfer to life outside of school. When we do teach patriotism, it is important as educators to avoid haphazard attempts to explain American patriotism in academic settings. Surface-level examination of patriotism done through lessons on the flag or the Star-Spangled Banner do not truly portray the patriotic ideals in a real, authentic sense. The author of How to Think About Patriotism suggests more profound considerations of these artifacts in order to illustrate the qualities of America that deserve our patriotism. While these types of lessons do have a place in the classroom, there are more critical ways of presenting patriotic ideals to students that are able to illustrate the core meaning of patriotism. We must look at sacrifices and hardships too, not just the pop culture version of American past.
Teaching patriotism in the classroom has been controversial for several years due to the increasing diversity in the United States. Patriotism represents the love and pride they have for their country. But if a student moves from Mexico to the United States, for an example, and they have a strong love and pride for their home country schools, shouldn't have to push their patriotic views on their students. Patriotism is taught in the classroom usually as a controversial issue. Social studies and history of the U.S. can be taught without being used to persuade students that they need to love this country, but rather show patriotism for whichever country they choose. Students should have a voice and be free to do whatever they want. The Huffington Post is an example of this by having every student say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. And according to this article, as well as Allison Antinkmeyer, a mother and a teacher who was interviewed, the pledge doesn't give students freedom to say their own pledge if they're from another country. They are being patriotic to the United States, but not being patriotic to their own country. So this definition of patriotism differs based on the diversity of the classroom, as well as the idea of patriotism being used as a controversial issue. Some may argue and say that students go to school to learn how to be productive citizens in this country, but times have changed, and to be a productive citizen, you don't have to love the country. You have a respect for the country and the values it holds, but you do not need to be forced to live the patriotic values it holds. According to Allison, teachers have the right to decide if they teach patriotism versus teaching the country's historic symbols and values. These are two different things, and patriotism is what someone shows they value, but saying the pledge is a virtue of someone who values patriotism. Since the United States has that freedom of citizens being given the opportunity to value what they choose, therefore, patriotism should not be inflicted on someone to have to follow a set of patriotic acts like the pledge.
After all the research we have conducted, we believe that teaching patriotism in the classroom is crucial to helping educate students to be contributing citizens in our society. We have considered many different perspectives, from professors to early elementary teachers to learning center professionals, and through our time in TCH 258. We truly believe that patriotism is an aspect that we feel needs to be incorporated into the American classrooms. As teachers, we understand the importance of providing our students with authentic resources that not only provide them with a basis for discovery, but also display diverse perspectives. I believe patriotism has a place in the American classroom. Regardless of where students come from, I believe having a sense of pride in our country can instill a sense of belonging and identity for children. Of course, based on my semester in Teach 258, I also believe it's important to present multiple perspectives and allow for students to construct their own understanding of patriotism. Promoting a false sense of superiority is not the goal of incorporating patriotism in the classroom. Instead, I think the teaching of patriotic ideals should involve important teachings on democratic values and government functions so students can be active, informed members of our country.
As teachers, we have so many jobs to keep us busy. However, I find one of the most important is to teach patriotism. If everyone can take the time to go back, think, and remember that each of our elementary days started with the Pledge of Allegiance. While many see this as something that everyone should be able to choose, I see it as an opportunity. I was reading an article in which a quote really sat with me. It was talking about how part of the reason we have people to go to school is so that we can educate them on how to be productive citizens in our nation. Thus, we are providing opportunities for our students to learn about our nation, respect it, and ultimately be productive and hardworking citizens within that nation. During one of our interviews, we had the privilege of interviewing the current director of Sylvan Learning Center, Julia Crushy. Julia is the mom of 3 children, but also the director of both the Normal and Peoria Sylvans. Thus, she comes into contact with several students ranging from pre-K to college. She talked about in her interview the importance of teaching patriotism in our classroom. She quoted that, yes, it should be taught. We should teach about our history and current events and symbols of our country, including governmental processes. However, we should not teach individual beliefs. It is a choice, not a law. Just like Julia said, as teachers, we need to teach about our nation, showing and talking to students about what it means to be a productive citizen, in which they will learn about our government, the different branches, the local, state, and federal levels, as well as voting, current events that are shaping history, and the symbols that define who we are as a nation. Together, teachers can teach patriotism without telling students what to believe or how to believe it.
After completing research and talking with others, I believe patriotism should be taught in all classrooms around the country. Learning about patriotism helps educate students about the world around them and how to be active and involved citizens in our nation. Additionally, they are able to learn about important people from the past that fought for change, learn about basic freedoms we have as a country, and how our democratic government works. As educators, we can teach these important topics and teach students to have pride in our country and show them how we got to where we are today. Thank you.
Throughout the research and from conducting interviews, I think that patriotism is an important part to the American classroom so students can understand their history of their country or even grasp a better understanding of being a citizen of the United States. Being patriotic is difficult to teach students, but can be modeled for students as teachers show their own values on patriotism without being biased to students who may have diverse perspectives on American patriotism.